We're going to start with Daniel in Nashville, Tennessee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, it's fantastic to talk to you guys. My name is Daniel Zizumbo. I'm originally from Mexico, and I'm actually studying my PhD here at Vanderbilt University in political science. And
what made you pick Tennessee specifically when you moved?
Actually, I just looked for the question I was interested in researching, and I didn't even know where Vanderbilt was, so I just ended up here.
Okay.
No, like, I just wanted to, Tracie, you're one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of you, but let me get to the point. So, just starting, I think it's fantastic. You're talking about variation in X and Y, and I think one of the biggest problems in all of the arguments of creationists can really be distilled into selection on the dependent variable, on what we are observing. So I remember very clearly there was an apologist that was talking about nothing about the universe, the existence of the universe. But I think in every case, every time I hear something about origins of complexity or origins of the cosmos, the problem is that you would have to observe something that a different universe, different types of universe, and see how would a different universe than ours would look like, right? In order for you to explain that. So I just think, and I would recommend a book called Designing Social Inquiry by King, Cohan, and Verba. Chapter 1, Selection on the Dependent Variable. It's really great chapter if you want to read, if you want to know more about, like, formally why, like, this can, like, go take down all of these arguments for origins and complexity.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Well, my second point that I wanted to talk about is that I'm from Mexico, and this will this is where I'm going to disagree a little bit with some of the views of the program. And the only thing I wanted to comment is that going into Mexico and seeing how our indigenous cultures has blended into with Catholicism, I think we should be, as atheists and skeptics, be a little bit careful on how going about taking rationality and addressing religion in some of these countries, specifically because, religion is very intertwined to culture.
So what do you think would happen if more people became educated and better at critical thinking? What are you afraid of right now?
Well, I mean, it's not exactly about the results for the process, right? This idea of modernizing the indigenous is something that has been there 500 years ago. It's not something new. You know, this idea of bringing rationality and bringing enlightenment.
Modernizing the indigenous,
people.
like the people of Mexico are supposed to be a bunch of like savages or something? Or what are you saying?
Right. This idea.
Really?
Right. This idea has been there for. No, I'm not saying that they're savages.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
my grandfather.
Sorry, I misunderstood you.
Hey, Daniel, can I step in, because I think I might be able to help you out here for a minute?
Yeah.
Basically, what you're saying is that there are groups of indigenous populations, like Indians, for example, not just in Mexico, but in other Central and South American countries, right? Amazon in particular, correct?
In the United States, in North Carolina.
You're talking about people in North Carolina?
Yeah, Cherokee, United States. I mean, they're everywhere. You know, like, you have Cherokees, Navajos, many indigenous people, not only Latin America. Yeah, but go on.
I guess what I was, maybe I'm not following. What I thought you were going to be addressing had to do with homogenization of cultures in the modern world.
Right.
And let me just say that on some levels, I share your concerns. Part of the concerns that I have are that there's a lot of people that confuse our cultural values and our cultural behaviors with human values in human behaviors, which is not correct. Okay, so I get a lot of times people that will talk to me about different sexual attitudes that are very much part of our culture, and they are unaware of how sexual attitudes vary in other cultures. They might know a few other types of cultures like the Middle East, or but they don't really understand the full gamut of human sexuality as it is surveyed through like anthropology, for example. And it disturbs me, the idea that modern ideas can hit these cultures before we really have enough time to make people aware of that diversity, because it's going to be gone soon, right? I mean, it seems almost like a fact that these cultures are going away. They're actually rapidly disappearing, and as they disappear, a lot of what is cultural reality for us is going to seem more and more like inherent human reality, even though it's not. And this is problematic because, to me, this leads to a lot of bad assumptions that people make about why people may or may not be doing things. Now, as far as I have a little bit of a fatalist view of it, because I'm not sure that there's a way to stop it. I know that there are some people that are interested in kind of putting a halt to that kind of cultural assimilation. It's a tough balance. I mean, the question that you're asking is a huge question. It's not not minor.
I mean, also, I guess I can kind of relate to this as sort of a secular American Jew, because there's a lot of stuff in Jewish literature about being really concerned about the culture just sort of dying out. And I mean, works like Fiddler on the Roof are just full of this theme. And on the other hand, I feel kind of like one of the people responsible for letting it die out, because I don't feel that strongly connected to a lot of the cultural traditions. And when I've tried to go into like even Reform temples, I'm just like, these people talk about God way too much and I can't take them seriously. And there's this old thing about, Jews need to marry other Jews, and it's important to keep to keep, it sounds kind of racist when you come down to it.
But the problem is that there are cultures that are existent now that don't have any kind of a history. So what's going to happen when they're gone is they're gone.
There's that, yeah.
I mean, they are wiped out, and that's the end of it. And we will never know what was there unless it can get cataloged fast enough.
Right, and somebody needs to go in and do a history of
this.
But
I guess my point is that this is a bigger question, I think, than...
I guess my only point, or my only call, and I would like to let you go because I know people are more interested in hearing the theist scholars. My only point is an invitation to all the atheists out there and skeptics to get to know Latin America and get to know the indigenous population and their cultures that live in your country and that live in Latin America. And before going to these countries and, maybe saying people or thinking about these ideas as silly, take an observer approach and try to, preserve it and try not. I've heard comments, very, very, very extreme comments in terms of bringing bringing them to rationality and ceasing all the hocus pocus that is going down there. And I don't like.
Yeah. I mean, but you have to think too, Daniel. I have a friend that works with indigenous populations, and one of the trips that she had a very difficult time trying to convince a family to bring their children to a hospital that was miles and miles away at a city. I mean, obviously they didn't live in a city; they lived in a small village and literally, a dirt floor hut. But they had children who had died. They were describing the situation to her since the last time she was there. She didn't understand what they were describing, but it sounded very bad, the descriptions of how the children had acted and what they looked like before they died. Mm-hmm. And the other children were starting to exhibit the early signs that the prior children who had died had. So she was then trying to convince these people to trust to take these kids to the hospital because they were, destined to die if they didn't get some help. And so you have this problem where there's the indigenous culture and there's like their beliefs, and you want to be respectful of like this kind of ancient cosmology that they have, and you want to make sure that we do catalog this and that we do understand it, before it ends up being wiped out. But at the same time, what do you do? Because if you have if you have medical facilities somewhere, and they are taking the children to the local shaman, and the children are dying, you've got to try to convince them to go and get Western medical help.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. It's a balancing act.
Like, I'd rather have these kids alive and losing some of their cultural identity than just be able to keep them under a glass case that we can study and, and go like, oh, they died. Isn't that interesting?
It's a multifaceted question. I feel what you're saying, Daniel, about the idea of showing regard for ancient tradition. I do get that.
No, I mean, I'm also an atheist, and I'm also a rationalist, and I agree with you 99.99% of the time. It's just,
it can't be that much. Come on.
I'm just trying to, try to disagree a little bit, or being skeptical of some of the approaches that have been taken hold in the general atheist skeptic community. But so. I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks
there are some good TED Talks on this as well if people are interested in looking at more of this, like the death of cultural diversity.